very, very focused and clear that you want to build a great business. That you should not waver. But how to do it can change because the market changes. When you're pushed to the corner, you come up with innovative decisions, innovative solutions, which you cannot have when you have a lot of money. Simple. Getting, really bootstrapped is actually a blessing. It's horrible at that time. It's trial by fire, but what you learn at that time holds you in such good stead. One of my vintage has gone to a railway station to buy a ticket, reach the end of the line, and only to be told there are no seats. So at some point of time, we were sending out, I think, 5,000-6,000 couriers a day, even if they were local. And I thought maybe we should buy a courier company.
Hey, in 20 years, you could say that MakeMyTrip is not the disruptor, but the incumbent now, right? Because you're now the leader, definitely. Absolutely. You've spent a lot of time in the market. And you could argue that there is a smaller 2% garage team, which will build out the next MakeMyTrip. Yeah. How do you stay in front of that, ahead?
My formula that's worked for me is...
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and I'm very delighted to share that we're now part of the Zerodha Media Network. Thank you so much for watching, and today is a very exciting episode. I've been long wanting to host this founder, and it's been a very, very aspirational episode. Join me in welcoming Mr. Deep Kalra, who is the founder and chairman of MakeMyTrip.
Thank you very much, Jivraj. It's a pleasure to be here. It took some time coming, but I'm very excited to be here.
I'm super excited. As I was mentioning, as somebody who's young in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's been...
you or me? I thought you were saying I'm young in this. Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure to learn from you, to watch all of your other interviews, to follow your journey. It just feels very surprising. I'm all of 25 years, and my first question is going to be about the 24-year journey you've had as an entrepreneur. But I've been waiting for this for a long time, and I'm really excited to grasp all your learnings. I want to take this opportunity to uncover the insights for the last 2-3 decades. You've been a part of the India story. You've been always very bullish. You were an early starter in the ecosystem. And I think what we sometimes fail to recognize as perhaps the younger generation is how difficult it must have been and how easier it's gotten to, start up. So I want to leverage all of it. Where I want to start is precisely with the 24-year mark. Why I'm emphasizing on that is, as youngsters, it feels just very difficult to grasp doing something for 5-10 years, let alone the time that you have spent building MakeMyTrip. I would love for you to put us into perspective as to what it means to be at it, to weather the storm, to continuously grow, and just still be so passionate, so articulate, so systematic. The passion really shows. So if you can just talk to us about what this long-term thinking really means, that'll be a great start.
Yeah. So I think you put it in context. Basically, the company, MakeMyTrip, as well as my entrepreneurial career, which is all MakeMyTrip. Prior to that, I did 3 professional jobs with over 8 years. Is basically how old you are. But that's interesting as a context. I think you've summarized it really well. I think, no really good company, great company definitely is born and built very quickly. They all take time. Yeah. There's this saying which goes around that behind every overnight success, there's 20 years of hard work. Yeah. In India particularly, and especially when we started, I think the ecosystem has dramatically changed. Yeah. When I started MakeMyTrip, this was year 2000. It was ironic timing, actually. And as Sanjeev Bikhchandani always says, we were probably the last company to get funded before the meltdown. And his was the second last. So Naukri got ICICI funding, and we in those early days got funded by someone called eVentures, which then pretty much wrapped up in 2001, thanks to the dot-com bust hitting India. I think it took a year and a half to hit India full on. And I was just so focused building what I was building that I was saying, listen, I'm excited about, firstly, the online space. That's why I turned entrepreneur. I turned entrepreneur only because the internet was calling. And I got convinced that a large company is not going to crack it. I was at GE Capital trying to get them to build geindia.com, blah, blah, blah. And I realized, no, this is something you have to live for and die for. The internet is something which you have to immerse yourself in completely. And at 30, I think you can take a lot more risks. So I said, how hard can it be? So, little did I imagine that 24 years on, we'll still be building. So I took the plunge. And at that point of time, I don't think I thought very hard about how long or how big I want to make it. I was excited with the internet. I wanted to build a business on it.
Sure.
And then second order was what businesses to build on the internet. And it seemed to me things that we were doing over the phone at that point of time were more likely to move online.
Yeah.
Now, for a lot of the audience, a very young audience, they don't know what's a dial-up modem. They've heard about it from their dads and moms, but it's a very, very painful way of going online. Yeah. Imagine you're in the remotest part of the country and you're trying to see a cricket match. You basically know how painful it is, something like that. So it was tough, but it was still there. The opportunity was there. The opportunity was calling, and seized it and said, let's get into this and let's do it. Come 2001, within a year of starting, I managed to raise $2 million early days. So early days was great. There was almost a honeymoon period. But we went all out, started building teams, started building website. And within 6 months, we had a fully functional website. On October 7, 2000, we launched a website, which was for Indians traveling to India, from India, and within India. Sure. So really inbound, outbound, domestic. In a short while, I realized that no one in India was ready to pay online. Lots of bookers, very few, or rather lots of lookers, very few bookers. Reason being, people didn't trust the internet. They were not willing to drop their credit card. They said, we'll take information, we'll get all the news on it, we'll do email and we'll do whatever else. But no. When it comes to buying, I've seen the best choices on MakeMyTrip. I call up my travel agent and say, Bhaiya, net pe ye mil raha hai, aap kya de sakte ho? And that became actually the barometer, which in a weird sort of way was the beginning of brand building and assurance. Because suddenly this thing started spreading that this new thing called MakeMyTrip.com offers great fares. Yeah. And that was the start. However, India took a long time opening up, but at the same point of time, non-residents, our own kith and kin and brethren in the US particularly, and we had launched there too, they took to it very fast. They took to it like a fish takes to water because they were used to buying online. Sure. Amazon already existed. Expedia already existed. So people were comfortable, and there's a lot of protection around there's awareness around protection that if your credit card gets misused, if someone rather doesn't give you the service they promised, you'll stop your charge. Yeah. That is now happening in India, and people are still worried. So I think that business did well. And, we always looked at conversions. So when we saw conversions doing well there and not doing well in India, we stopped burning all marketing money in India. And that simple decision, I think, saved us and helped us tide over the next 4 years, which were really our trial by fire. And I know you want to hear about them. The reality is money dried up. E-Ventures wanted their money back. Yeah. They said, either shut down the company, pay everyone 1-2 months and, or buy us out. And obviously we didn't have the money to buy them out at that valuation. And then you learn what they don't teach you at MBA school, which is how to buy out on the cheap, which is distress valuation. Yeah. So we had some very interesting negotiations, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, managed to buy back equity for 46 lakhs, those $2 million. But the website was built. Yeah. Big lesson learned. Yeah. The lesson learned at that point of time was put yourself in the shoes of the other side. E-Ventures wanted to basically, cut their losses, cut their liability. Yeah. Liability as we know now. And they were happy to give it to the entrepreneur. In fact, so much so, 2 of their partners who actually are very, very, dear to me now were angel investors. Yeah. Because the fund was wrapping up, but both Sandeep and Anup wanted to support us, and they did. Neeraj wanted to, but he couldn't because there was a conflict of interest. He was running WNS and Travelocity was a client. So long story short, we were now management held with some angel money for the next 4 years. We had very, very, very little. At no point of time did I have more than 2 months of payroll and 2 months of rent. When you're pushed to the corner, you come up with innovative decisions, innovative solutions, which you cannot have when you have a lot of money. Simple. Yeah. So getting, really bootstrapped is actually a blessing. It's horrible at that time. It's trial by fire. But what you learn at that time holds you in such good stead. Yeah. And I mean it very sincerely. Had we not gone through that phase, we would have not survived a couple of other crises to follow. Yeah. Whether it was 2008, whether it was, airlines in India, the Kingfisher meltdown leading to chaos here, and then, of course, COVID. Yeah. In COVID, our business was obliterated. In national lockdown quarter, we were down 96%, and we were a public limited company, reporting we are down 96%. But I think we developed a sense of calm. We were kind of inured because, you've gone through the grind and you're saying, okay, listen, we'll survive this. We have the cash, but how do we do it smartly? What can we cut? Let's focus on expenses. Let's focus on other things, variable costs, blah, blah, blah. So I think there was a lot of learning during that period, which you don't realize then. You capture, it goes at some recess at the back of your mind. And then, it's like RAM. You just pull it and you summon it, it comes to you when you need it. And that's experience. So I think it was really the experience that is helping us now. And those 4 years were the toughest, but they were also the best. They're truly those years where they're very formative. Just like, for an individual, you can say, listen, my high school years or my teenage years, very formative. For a company, those are formative years. Also, as you would imagine, a lot of people jumped off that train. Because this is a train to nowhere. And I have never been good at, telling a lie. So I told everyone, guys, this is the situation. No cuts for junior folks. We don't know when you'll get a raise. But anyone who's VP and that level, you should take cuts. And I'm going to take a cut of 100% till I can do it. And then I had these 2-3 wonderful gentlemen who either took big cuts or, funded us from the outside. And I think, whether it's Rajesh, Keyur, Sachin, they should get even more credit than I do for building the company what it is today. And had I not met these guys, the company wouldn't have been what it is today.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot of insights there to just keep going. I think
that's the big one.
To keep going.
You said it. Jivraj, just keep pushing the envelope as much as you can. You're really running on fumes. That's fine till you can, because you really cannot time when things will change. Winds change, things change, and that's what happened to us. Lo and behold, 2 years crazy. Third year, one of our customers, an NRI sitting in the US who booked business class, first class tickets from us regularly, told one of my customer service agents on the phone that I'm coming to India and I want to meet Deep. And I said, oh my God, what have you done? I remember this young girl. I said, Rupa, what have you done? Have you screwed up his ticket? She said, no, everything's fine. He's very happy, he wants to meet you. This gentleman, Mr. Maheshwar, came, he met with me, and in 1 hour we shook hands and he gave us, I think, a check of 150K at a fair valuation. And who could have thought of that? The next year, a gentleman who was like a CA, well-known CA in Delhi, known to me, known to my dad, he said, listen, I've got someone who's my client, who's Indian, but runs a travel company in the UK. And he's one of India's best birders, Mr. Raj Singh, based from Bharatpur, but he had settled down in the UK. And he's seen the rise of online travel, e-bookers in the UK, and basically he wants to meet a good company out here. He wants to meet you. He didn't even tell me he wants to invest. I said, sure, would love to meet him. Met him, this wonderful, nice gentleman. We are still in touch. He's now doing cruises on all our big rivers and things like that. And he gave us, again, 100, 200K pounds or something like that. Oh, wow. So these two slugs of capital came from the left field. I mean, they were really not expected, but they kept us going. So year 3 and year 4, we got a little bit of capital, but really tiny. In today's day and age, 1 crore rupees maybe. 2005, everything had changed. Maybe we called it late. Maybe I should have, relaunched in India in 2004. The website was alive, no marketing. I have to give credit to Indian Railways. IRCTC made Indians comfortable paying online. Because the alternative was so painful. I don't know if your generation, you guys haven't done that. We've all done that. Any one of my vintage has gone to a railway station to buy a ticket, reach the end of the line, and only to be told there are no seats. And what do? You go back, whatever. So they cracked that. They said, this is dumb. CRIS, Chris had the project. They built this interface, which was, whatever it was, but it worked. Got people confident. And then low-cost carriers came into the country. Air Deccan started, which gave us a great opportunity because traditional travel agents didn't want to sell low-cost carrier tickets at that time because A, they made no money or very little money. B, they had to put their credit card down. If their customer changed his or her mind, the travel agent went out of pocket. So that was where technology played the role, where we could cut across and we could put the customer directly in touch with our interface. And if you like the fare, if you like this particular, trip to make, you could go ahead and drop your own credit card. That, I think, was the beginning of the change in India. And 2005 to 2010, frenetic growth. I think we grew 25 times, 25x. Wow. And we IPO'd in 2010 on NASDAQ. So I think one super nice start, honeymoon year. for
really bad, yes.
trial by fire, really. I'll call it trial by fire because I think it really helped us.
Yeah.
So I won't say help because when we look back, all the guys who were around then said, they always said those were the crazy times. We were in this tiny space. We were in a mezzanine in Okhla Phase 1 where we shrunk to that, where we paid 11 or 12 rupees per square foot. When we touched, I stood up straight and raised my hand. I touched the full palm, not even touched the ceiling, full palm, because it was, 7 or 8 feet. That's all it was. And it was a long, narrow thing. It was like a train bogie. And 3 of us sat at the end when we swiveled around and there was this round table. Our knees touched each other, but we still had a tiny TV on top to watch cricket. And most of us spent, I think, 18 hours in office for regular. Yeah, a lot of guys slept in office quite often and things like that. But those were crazy days. So
yeah. Wow, it's so overwhelming to understand the scenario then and what it is now, and to just understand that, stories do turn around. It takes you
and great value of staying the course.
Yeah.
Because things will change. Yeah. And even if they don't, you'll only get to know after that.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer many businesses have not really seen the light of day or not blossomed because someone gave up too early.
Yeah.
Little bit more, things change. And I know many, many such stories out here. So mentality of a marathon runner, marathon swimmer is a very good one for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Or at the minimum, when you want to start a business, I think ask yourself, do I have gas in the tank for 4 to 5 years?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years मैं चल सकता हूँ, then get in. Because before that, for you to see green shoots of a business might be hard. If it happens in 2 years, great, power to you. Yeah. But if it doesn't, your mentality is I've checked in for this much time.
Yeah.
I know it's hard for this generation. We see, CVs and people seldom
every 2 years.
Couple of years people are moving and they're not even embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
So I see the CV and I see the Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very hard to go ahead with people who are like that. And, it's the opposite mentality. But the moment you see a CV where people have been at it, done a decade in a good company, changed jobs, of course, that shows a lot of commitment. Yeah. So I think that's what you need.
Yeah. I've heard you say that previously as well, and it really stands out, right? Like you have to spend a given number of years to actually call it a good shot, right? Yeah. Sometimes we take a premature call, not knowing whether or not we tried enough. And that's really
Surya Kumar Yadav is a great example, right?
Yeah, so many examples.
He came back later. No, he just stuck at it. He reinvented his game. What is a reinventing? That's pivoting.
Yeah.
So you might have to pivot. Mm-hmm. So be very, very focused and clear that you want to build a great business. Yeah. That you should not waver. But how to do it can change because the market changes.
Absolutely.
And that's what people did. He realized that I need to do that. And today, of course, he's the flavor of the month. But even before that, if you think about it, it's an amazing second coming and a completely change in the way he played his game. Yeah. So I think we should, if you are a sportsman, sometimes you can't help but think of all these things.
No, that's a perfect anecdote. Yeah. But it's very interesting, you went public at a time when the India story was just getting started in its new avatar. Right? 2010 is when, 2013 is, I think, when Flipkart really blew, right? That's the 12 was when maybe InMobi became a unicorn. 13 is when Flipkart became a unicorn. And you could argue that before that, the guardrails for India internet weren't as strong. You didn't have a Razorpay to connect your payment gateway. You didn't have a Shiprocket to perhaps, do the logistics. Yeah. You didn't have those guardrails on the internet. And you've had the pleasure of seeing that. I want to ask a twofold question there. One is, in the benefit of hindsight, right? What is the delta that you have observed over the years? And also as a founder, left-brain driven, successful, you could argue that there were a lot of compelling opportunities for you. But we've also often heard that focus is what makes greatness happen. And you stood the course. Now it's a travel giant, right? But one may make the case that, you were seeing the wave in its fullest. Could you have done more things? Were there other opportunities that were tempting? Yet what was it that held you back? What was it that kept your focus? And what was this delta that you had the pleasure of witnessing? How did you see the India story unfold on its fillets? I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Actually, I've never been asked this question. It's quite fascinating. I think the way you framed it is really nice. I think these guardrails, or as I call them, building blocks. Mm-hmm. So the building blocks of India have evolved over time. Sure. Right. And today we're very, very proud of the India stack. It's fantastic. The financial stack is probably the best in the world, I would say, in some ways. It didn't exist then. But I'll take you back to why I chose online travel. Simple thesis. What do you do on the phone? You talk to your travel agent on the phone. You don't meet your travel agent. Maybe once a year you send the check, run a boy. This is way back then.
Yeah.
There was obviously no online payment. So his guy came to pick up the check. He gave you your tickets. They were paper tickets. I also thought of online stockbroking, and I was very excited about that. And that was also a business you did on the phone. I did not even remotely think that at that point of time, people would be buying fashion online or clothes online for exactly these reasons.
Who will pay online? The Indian consumer.
Even before, one step before that, rich content online was very hard to get because the bandwidth was so poor.
Yeah.
So you would, your page would actually literally download, and only desktop, nothing on the mobile then, would actually download slowly.
Yeah.
So there was no question of having rich media and content and things like that, then payment. So credit card was a boon, which definitely came. In fact, I think small things, we don't give them enough credit, like two-factor authentication. So when two-factor authentication came, at that point of time, we were given enough time by the regulator, get ready, and the banks, everyone get ready for this. But still, when it happened, despite one or two push deadlines, business fell off a cliff. People didn't know how this thing works. How is it going to work? No amount of this thing. But cut forward a few months, it was one of the best things to happen. Because to give you surety, to give you, assurance on the payment that this is this thing, and to give you that comfort and safety about your credit card being used, because that was one of the big concerns. So here, India is way ahead than the US.
Yeah.
US still works on approximation of numbers and names, and they say, okay, valid to go. It's scary. Someone gets your credit card, and today on the dark web, you have everything available. Yeah. At least you hold on to this thing, which today is everyone from a 3-year-old to an 83-year-old knows what's an OTP or a 103-year-old. And that's changed the game. So, that safety and that came. For us, another very unique thing happened for travel, which was e-tickets. So prior to e-tickets, there was a paper ticket. I actually have in my office on a pin-up board, the only paper ticket I've written, because my colleagues would always joke, you really can't even write out a ticket, which is true. So I wrote out one Air India ticket and I have it up on my board very proudly. But e-ticket changed the game. Prior to that, we were shipping out thousands and thousands, and not the printout that you see today. This was a booklet of pre-carbon, self-carbon paper.
Right.
So it was a booklet of almost 10, 15 very thin kind of sheets, but you had to ship that with an invoice. So at some point of time, we were sending out, I think, 5,000-6,000 couriers a day, even if they were local. And I thought maybe we should buy a courier company, because those were the constraints.
Yeah. And the delivery fleets also must be broken. There must be delays.
Very
you don't
average.
know when it's coming.
Very average.
Yeah, exactly.
E-ticket changed the game. So these small things, mobile internet, of course, was a huge one if you look at it. And apps coming was a huge one. 4G is a huge one. Tech stack. So all of these developments have just taken it into another orbit. They're what I call building block enablers.
Yeah.
So today, it's hard to imagine what else do we need. But at the same point of time, we have this thing which is called AI, which is going to probably have an impact of all of these factors put together and compounded.
Absolutely.
It is, as we all know.
And it's the internet moment, right? Which you observed at
absolutely. Yeah. So, when we used to talk about India's taking time coming, I remember there was this very famous report, maybe written 25 years ago. McKinsey wrote about 300 million Indian middle class. Right? And many, many businesses were born on that, and many of them crashed because it was there, but there was a catch. How do you define middle class? Yeah. And the middle class at that point, the definition was people who can afford, I think sometimes it was a two-wheeler or sometimes a commodity basket of this, and this. So I had a friend who used to be on the board of Airtel, and he told me on one of the board meetings of Airtel long back, it said, so how many phone connections can we sell, or how many phones can we sell? So someone said, okay, these are the number of two-wheelers in the country. These are the number of phones we can sell. He's saying that was the thinking, because you couldn't think beyond. Also, they were talking about 32 rupees a minute being charged on the phone, which when it changed from 16 to 8 to 1 to nothing, changed the game again. Because suddenly everyone said, oh my God, there's no cost. So today everyone's, and then now Jio has changed it further. So everyone's consuming tons of content all the time, getting hooked, getting addicted. And then eventually we've just seen a rise in prices, and all of that will happen over time. But it's something you can't now do without. So the delta has been crazy. I don't really think, if we launch later, of course it would have been faster, but who knows on the competition? So the quality of, many things change.
Yeah.
So I'm not one to look at the glass ever as half full.
Sure.
So for me, it's always never as half empty. For me, it's always half full. So there was an advantage there. Like I told you, we survived because we cut marketing here. There were 19 other travel.coms at that point in India, which you wouldn't have heard of, but there was a Net to Travel, a Travel Genie, Travel Mart India, and Yatra came later in 2005. This was the first wave. There were so many travel companies around with very generic names and all of that, and well-funded, but they kept marketing in India. And I think in hindsight, that was the mistake. So always, guys, look at the numbers. See, the right side of the brain is very valuable. That is your fuzzy logic. That is your gut. Yeah. Actually, the gut has 25% of the neurons of your brain, and that's why it's gut instinct, right? The left side is your analytical part. Yeah. So you have to balance the two. So the final leap of faith you will take based on your gut. But you can validate a lot of that. You can mitigate a lot of your risk factors if you believe in numbers and analytics. Your left side saying, and for us, very simple, conversions. Unaided conversion. Discounting didn't exist then. Yeah. If unaided conversions were going up, repeat is another brilliant measure. In US, India, repeat happened very infrequently, so it was hard to measure. But in other businesses, if you get unaided repeat, you're onto a good thing. It's as simple as that. Brands are built by experience, not by great marketing. In fact, if you do great marketing and your store is not ready, you can almost axe your own foot. Yeah. Do great marketing, be totally ready. People come in, they come back. That's it. You're onto something good. But measure these. So measure conversion. Till date, we measure conversion by hour. So if we're sitting at this afternoon hour on this particular day, I can only compare this with the same hour, same day last week, neutralizing for any holidays or something else that come, because customer behavior is different. Yeah. So in the morning, people do different things about, at least in travel, and maybe other things. Your patterns emerge, and that is the power of a lot of customers and a lot of data. And that's why I think if you're on the internet, or any consumer business, I think you have to have a head for numbers and truly believe in them. They never lie. Absolutely. And people say, don't look at the past. I think actually it gives you a great amount of this thing into how it's moving. Yeah. And if your trend lines are moving in the right direction, then you just have to fund the gap. Sure. Which is what I had to do in 2001. Fund the gap till we break even. Then we are fine.
Fascinating. I think that's super interesting to hear, and just goes to show how much of, groundwork you had to lay by yourself. And that brings me to the point that it just feels like a lot of what you're saying is a constant reminder to say that founders have to just become almost experts, for the lack of a better word, at what they're doing, right? And one may, again, argue that, coming from an investment banking background with no or little knowledge about travel, you had to do all of these things that you had to perhaps do from scratch, understand consumer behavior, understand how to build a website, get all of these things together. Even as you go, IPO, there are so many these unknowns, right, that you discover for the first time as a founder. And what's magical, and I've had the pleasure of observing a lot of founders tell me that they just cracked it somehow. During the journey, they were just able to grasp it. What are some of these, crucial things, if you had to highlight, that these are things I had very little idea about by the time I got to it, but I somehow cracked it and I just became like an expert on it. It could be, the metrics bit. It could be leading a company to IPO. It could be many of those factors. But I would love to hear the distinct things that you feel you just had to learn on the fly and you mastered along the way.
No, again, I think you've, your prior experience as an entrepreneur is helping you, or in an entrepreneurial stint, think about these things. Absolutely. You are going blind. There is no way anyone can tell you what to prepare you for when you're embarking an entrepreneurial journey, especially in the early days when no one really had done it in India. Today also, you'll do something else. You'll do it differently. So firstly, what gives you the confidence? I think part of it is innate. The other one I have to, thank, even my alma mater. I think, at least in my case, an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad gave me a lot of confidence of saying, let's break this down into first principles. Like we cracked everything out there, any case study, any this thing. Let's take it, how hard can it be, right? So I think that helped. 8 years of experience helped. In fact, not investment banking, but corporate banking, which was far removed from this. An entrepreneurial stint with AMF Bowling, which also helped me. I guess the seeds of entrepreneurship was sown then, But silly me, I didn't realize that because I had a great time doing it, though it wasn't anything close to being a success. And then working for a large, phenomenal company like G Capital and what I call learning by osmosis. So in all jobs, I think I've learned a lot from people around me, not just managers and bosses, but even colleagues. Even if I go back to my MBA days, I think one learned so much from my batchmates and dorm mates and everything else. And I think there's a lot of value that you have to attribute to learning by osmosis. Being in the same room as folks who are taking those decisions in hard times can teach you a lot.
Absolutely.
So what we love to do, even in the early days of MakeMyTrip, is invite a lot of people on the fringe to meetings who you may not think they're, involved directly. And my belief is, once you've hired someone, you have to trust them completely. I also believe there's no great secret sauce in what we do. The devil's really in execution. So it's not something which, you copied one great thing. No, that's not going to change it. But thirdly, and most importantly, if you have 6, 7 of these young, bright minds there, 1 or 2 might get totally charged up and say, listen, wow, this is a company I want to work with and a company I can excel in. And that's been our story. So if I will take credit, coming to your question, for what is that one thing, I think team building. And I think that's the most important skill. I couldn't code to save my life. I'd learned coding way back in school and then done some NIT course, which helped me. I could flow chart so I can, kind of combat whenever you get deadlines and early days, but I couldn't code. So I had to rely on people to code. So first we outsourced it, then we moved it in-house in 2007, and that was a good decision. But you need to build a team for that. I'm not a guy, finance and accounting guy. I had to have someone for that, find the right person. I could do marketing, I could do some amount of product, but the moment you got into specialization, I needed people. So I think team building is the key thing, which is not only attracting and hiring good talent, but motivating them to give their best and retaining them. So if I could take credit for anything, I'd say, I think we've done well at that. And then understanding every individual's hot buttons. Everyone has different hot buttons. And so what excites them? Some people are driven by Maslow theory, low, very base. Paisa do, kaam karenge. But they are not your kind for the long term. But the best of guys and the best of gals, they are actually driven by, they're super achievers. And they're driven by self-actualization. They're saying, I want to do something great because I feel good when I do it and I'll get that pride and all. I want to contribute. I get the challenge, I get a high. How do you get those people? How do you get them to believe in your cause? And how do you take them forward and lead them and ensure that they are getting their just and due rewards? So we're very, very proud of the culture we've set up at MakeMyTrip.
Can we go second order there? Sure. Because a lot of people talk about the importance of hiring, that this is absolutely an institution is only built and is as good as its people. But what does it mean to really crack it, right? I mean, what are the things that you perhaps look out for? And in the moment, I'm sure that considering survival was at stake, considering, you have numbers that you want to achieve as a public company, there is reporting to be done, there are targets. How do you, in the moment prioritize it? Is it something that you have to, are these learnings in hindsight? Do you develop them as you go on? Or do you think young founders who are chartering on their course of building a company can also be mindful about this and have systems in place to maybe think through the human aspect of the business more deliberately?
Yeah, I think systems fall into place later. I think first it has to be the practice. So if we talk about the culture, firstly, the culture is nothing but a reflection of founders, co-founders, personal values. And then all the people you hire around you who stay on, people who kind of are in sync with those core values, then you have that kind of thing. But coming to team building and hiring is definitely the most important decision we make in a company and for both sides. But what you have to remember again is it's actually a bigger decision for the candidate than it is for you. Because for them, there's one career. There's 30, 40 years of working life or 20 years in your generation or whatever people want to work, right? So a bad decision will take you back a year or two and will not look good on your CV. It's bad for the company, it's worse for you. But so therefore, I try to do a few crazy things during hiring even today. Firstly, I try to de-sell the company. So I try to give all the bad things about the company upfront, whatever. Whatever it is, hum abhi chote hain, and we are not levers, we are not Amazon, we are not this, we are not that, you should know it and all of that. So We are mindful of what we spend even today, and that's important. You get paid, you'll do well. We have good stuff, offsites and all, but we clearly are not a big MNC. Because I've seen a lot of big MNC guys don't necessarily work very well with younger companies. And it's for me as a hirer to understand what excites that person and what doesn't. The second I look for is conviction. So in whatever. So the candidate must have conviction and be able to stand her ground in whatever she believes in. So it could be a political belief, although they say stepping on political, this thing not good. It could be any belief today. So it could be on the impact, on ethical impact on AI, what is going to happen out here, et cetera, or, what ails infrastructure here, et cetera. But I would love to start with, I typically just start with a very, very simple thing. Please critique our app. And believe it or not, I've had people, maybe they didn't come in for the product or the tech job, saying, I haven't spent enough time on it.
Really?
It happens. It happens 1 in 20. And I'm like, seriously? So that's a 20-minute meeting with me, just being courteous. I'm saying, okay. So I love the critique and I push back. So if someone says it should be this, and push deeper. So ability to really stand your ground, but with logic.
Yeah.
I like that. The other thing which is different from most others, I never ask people on what's on their CV. They're obviously better than, they know all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I love to get onto the personal side, which is really see aspects of their personality which are interesting. Why? Because if I have to work with this person, the person should be interesting, because I have very short attention span now. I probably haven't tested, but I'll probably test positive for ADD because I do have short attention span. But I have to find the person interesting.
Yeah.
Why that's important is tomorrow that person, and I'm obviously hiring at senior levels only when I'm meeting people, that person is going to build a team and be responsible. There is no way you can do that if you're not an interesting person. No one wants to work for boring people. Absolutely. They want to work for interesting people, and you can call that an aspect of leadership or whatever it is. There's got to be some aspect to your personality which is interesting, right? Absolutely. So whatever else you do, what's important, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a sport. And I think the way you saw, if I've looked at my watch too many times in that interview, it's not happening. It's as simple as that. But if the person's telling me stories about themselves in a way where I can see this person I can project that this is the way this person will be able to sell a job in his or her unit to someone else. Come work with us. This is what we are building. Because our stuff is very intangible. It's not something like, this is what we make. We make this car. It's a beautiful car. You're seeing it out on the road. It's not. It's not a fragrance. It's not a car. It's not a mobile phone. It's like almost a new dream. You're seeing today flight booking, hotel booking, holiday booking, this. But you are not seeing AI-powered voice booking in Hindi. Actually, we've just launched that. So maybe but something which we haven't even dreamt of.
Right.
So if you have
have that foresight.
Yeah, if you have a product guy come in, Jivraj, if you come in for an interview and you've done product, I'll say, very likely I'll ask you first thing, envisage booking online in 2 to 3 years' time, not in 5 years' time with AI. What will it look like? And if you say, it'll be this incremental, no, it won't. I don't have the answer. I have some ideas. But I'd love to hear your ideas. Right. And I'll say, just let loose. Let loose. Just think how people would like. And it's amazing what a 25-year-old can tell you. Because you guys live your life. You've been born on the internet. It's second nature for you. And the way you're thinking about it is very different. I mean, I go to Instagram, much to my kids' and wife's chagrin, maybe once in 2 weeks. I just don't. It's not habit. It's one more thing. I don't go till someone tells me. And they'll say, we shared this reel with you. I haven't even seen it. I said, but I'm not there. Like, I have enough other places. But you guys go, multiple times a day. And therefore, your thinking is only in a very, very different way. The latest, whether it's the swiping, whether it's this, that's how customer behavior is changing online. So it's great to get young people, but to get young people who can think out of the box. So I'm looking for that largely.
Sure. Yeah. And that's wonderful. I think to hear from somebody who's had, years of experience understanding the pulse of what works, what doesn't, work with such diverse people, I think that's lovely to know. This has been so interesting. I have so many more questions on the business in itself, but maybe we'll take another course to the conversation. What's so fascinating about your business is just like what the phenomena it represents, the behavior it represents, which is travel in and of itself, right? I'd love to hear your insights from building in a very, very fascinating, interesting space as to what you've observed customers do with travel, right? I think there are such different forms of travel. There's just such different forms of stay. You've seen the birth of Airbnb change the accommodation sort of ecosystem. You've seen homestays. You've seen tier 2, 3 citizens of the country now become, savvy with travel, really put themselves out there. What are these distinct learnings from a customer behavior lens? You've also mentioned many a times that, you like observing behavior, and that's something you keenly do.
Absolutely.
So would love to hear the myriad of observations, learnings, and insights on a customer level that the business has provided to you.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I think one is very fortunate to be in this very exciting space, travel, particularly when it's leisure travel.
Yeah.
It's, I think, one of the most pleasurable things one can do. And the next generation and the next generation is actually spending more and more on travel, which bodes very well for our business because they're saying we don't want to own a home. We don't want to own a car probably. We're actually going to get very mindful about even wasteful expenditure on clothes and various other things. So very woke, but the places that they want to spend is on travel and do it in a smart way also. Stay in places which are eco, green options. Tomorrow there'll be green fuel. It's already a reality. A European carrier completed a full flight on green aviation fuel. It's more expensive, but it'll happen. Eventually it'll happen. So I think that's exciting. What we've seen in India is actually a period, this 24-year, or even if I take 20-year from 2005 to now, of a time when travel was really, leisure travel I'm talking about, was the, preserve of people who were doing very well. They would do this summer holiday, 1-2 week, etc. They might go in India. They might even go overseas. That was the very rich, etc. And it was very planned. Maybe a second holiday in winter somewhere, a short break sometimes and all. It was literally that. Yeah. And it was beginning to come up in this thing. And hark back to a time when we were growing up, and I grew up in a comfortable middle class background, we would take, one driving holiday in the summer. And thanks to my parents liking travel, saw many parts of the country, typical hill stations up north. So whether it was Shimla, Manali, by road, car and all, it was fantastic. Those were summer vacations, and very often you were sent off to a bua's house or a grandmother's house or whatever, and those were your summer vacations. Or cousins came over and you were very happy. That was it. Yeah. And then you got some of us were very lucky to get an international vacation, which was a big, big, big deal. Yeah. Today, all of this has changed. Have money, will travel. Also, the options have become so easy to go. I think you touched upon it. It's not only the well-to-do. So it's the well-to-do, not only the well-to-do in the 5 big metros. The people are traveling from cities and towns overseas. The names of those towns you and I may not have heard of. Yeah. It's true because there's money. There is money there. There is industry there. There's trading there. There's minerals there, whatever. And guess what? We have 110 functional airports. Yeah. So connecting is very easy. Gone are the days where you have to take a long bus or a car ride, come to a metro, take. Today we have, I think, so many international airports. I think last count, maybe we have 15 airports are international. Yesterday I read a news item where Port Blair is going to get its first international flight, Air Asia from Kuala Lumpur. They did a trial flight and so maybe we're 20. I should know this off the back of my hand. But so you can take off overseas. Yeah. You talked about the trend on homestays. Distinct trend, we saw it happening, but it takes a pandemic sometimes to really make it mainstream. So I've always been a big champion of it because I've realized that some of my best holidays and vacations were actually staying in a homestay or a villa. Yeah. And it started off in Goa, but up in the hills also in a cottage. And without realizing, we were actually doing a homestay kind of thing. Yeah. I've even done the partial. In Goa, I've stayed in one room in Mrs. Braganza's house, paying, believe it or not, 900 rupees a night with me and my wife. Wow. Yeah, we've done it all, but we didn't even know what it was called then. Yeah. It was a classic, simple room. It was New Year time. It was very expensive. I remember the mobike cost 1,200 rupees a day. The room cost 900. Wow. And when we were done with the trip, she had said, just toss the key over the gate and that's it. You're out of here. So we've done that. It's been now, that trip has probably been 13, 14 years ago. It was a great trip. But that has become mainstream now. And supply is responding to it. So whether it's airline connectivity we talked about, India and international, low-cost carrier, not really low-cost any longer, but you can get to places today, and that's a massive trend, in 4 hours, which you could not dream of. Yeah. I recently went to Almaty and it prompted me to write about just what a fantastic getaway it was. Neat, clean, cheap, beautiful, up in the mountains, trekking, hiking, snow cap. It was beautiful. It actually took me by surprise And I went with a bunch of friends, and after that sent so many people who have gone there because of that, saying, just go and check it out. Of course, I said, it's not Kashmir. Kashmir is stunning and beautiful, but it's slightly different. So go and it was less than 4 hours direct flight. Baku's 4.5 hours you can get to. Yeah. Vietnam now, there are 3 different places you can fly to. Thailand is anyway fully opened out. Sri Lanka was always there. And in our own country. So Andaman's still tough to reach, which may not be a bad thing because then it's staying pristine. Ladakh, you need longer time. I don't think there's that kind of landscape anywhere in the world. So people are exploring. People are going off the beaten track. And homestays, so that's where they come together. Earlier, you couldn't go off the beaten track till you were ready to stay in a tent or some kind of acco. Today, there are homestays there because people are saying this is a commercial opportunity. We own a home. We're happy to give 2 rooms out. We're happy to give the outhouse out. We're happy to give meals to the person and all and make, 5,000 rupees a night. So I think supply is responding very fast. Even the hotel growth has been frenetic. Today, you have hotels in parts of the country you can't imagine, which they've come up very fast. Northeast is now opening up in a nice, interesting way. So getting to places has become easy. And let's not forget, much cheaper than it used to be. Delhi, Bombay, way back in the day, I remember the time, not last minute travel, was regularly 10 grand plus. Regularly. Because there was less supply. And today, I think in our mind, the benchmark is about 5 grand. We should get a ticket if we book. That's what it is because you have tons of supply. So the big trends that we are seeing is people are traveling as larger groups, much more than they were earlier. So earlier you had couple travel, today you have family. The other very big group, which has become huge, very big theme is celebration travel. It's huge. Milestone birthday, milestone anniversary, milestone. Of course, destination weddings have become huge. But celebration travel has become big. People now need an excuse to say, huge thing. 50th birthday, 40th birthday, and on so many. We just came back from Phuket for a friend's 50th birthday. It was a total blast. It was very easy to go. It was probably more reasonable than going in India, which is again a supply issue because there's a lot more hotel supply out there, etc. In India, there's still a supply constraint. So I think celebration travel, I am noticing, and we have noticed it's big. B, C, and D town travel, much more. Did not exist earlier. Definitely off the beaten path travel. I think experience and soft adventure. We call it, people want adventure, but we're not talking about hardcore. They're saying soft adventure. Solo trips, ladies traveling solo trips and joining a group or just going solo. Or women getting together with other women and someone putting it together has become a big one. They feel more comfortable doing that kind of travel. So I think offbeat and discovering, also theme-based. People are doing food-based travel. And, shows on TV made it popular. There was Highway on My Plate, which made it popular. But people are doing that. Foodies is a big thing and people do that. Sports travel has become really big now. People around events. So whether it's the World Cup events for cricket or football or F1, people are traveling. Concert travel. Just as Taylor Swift is starting a whole new economy.
I went for Coldplay last year.
There you go. So a lot of people are doing that travel. I've made at least 4 or 5 trips to Bombay for concerts. But last summer I remember planning a trip around 2 big concerts in London. Because 2 of my favorite stars were playing back to back. So at Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen, I said, this is a dream trip. So I think a lot of that is, and it's becoming mainstream. This is not something small. So what I love saying when I observe people traveling, especially overseas, you're on a Indigo flight and you're going to, let's say, Phuket. And you're just seeing what's going on out there. The big group which has come, typically it could be from Gujarat. They've got their snacks. They've got this thing. They may not be your typical person you thought would be traveling. And they've not come necessarily from Ahmedabad or Baroda or Surat. They've come from a town you may not have heard of. But they have the money. They will travel. They'll spend a lot of money. When we talk to our hotel partners overseas, they're saying, we love Indian travelers. Say, really? We're very loud and all. You say, no, Indian travelers spend when they come. Because for us, travel is celebration. So there'll always be a budget and then some. There's always and then some. So people will say, ye to party karenge, ab bahar hai to ab party karenge. So that thing is there with a lot of Indians. And Indians, I think, are really fond travelers, very curious to see their own country and curious to see the world. So I think we're going to become the next big force, Indians traveling all over the world, next big thing. And I think everyone is expecting that.
And that's very fascinating. I think coming from you itself testifies to, the large signals we've always heard of, or we are now starting to slowly observe. But this is
we see it every day.
The true reality, and this is where we're developing as a country.
Exactly.
Especially, it shows in the best form through its travel. And that's very, very great for the country, I think, as a whole, and really nice to hear those learnings.
I should actually also, caveat that with our problems around travel.
Yes, please.
It would be unfair to not talk about, because I also think we have over-tourism, which is a problem.
Yeah, please. And in fact, I was going to come to that.
So
if you can club that with any staggering statistics also, just to put things into more perspective, it'd be nice to understand.
So over-tourism is hard to say on staggering, but I can tell you, 2019, I went to Manali during summer, in June, peaked this thing, and my heart broke. I wrote a piece, I wrote an op-ed for Times of India, and I was really saying we have systematically ruined all our hill stations because of over-tourism.
Yeah.
Why do we allow it? Most hill stations have one or two entry points. Why don't we ensure that we can't allow a certain number of people to come in who might end up staying in their car on Mall Road? This happens all the time. But why? Because homes are becoming homestays. A home which was supposed to take no more than 10, 12 people is now taking 40 people, and then disasters happen. So it's not planned. I think our infrastructure planning around tourism, and we have to have satellite places to go. And that's where homestays play a really good role, to disperse the crowd. But the first-time traveler is still very curious to go and see North Goa.
Yeah.
The first-time guy who's gone to Goa with his family is going to North Goa. It's only the second or third, and people who go multiple times say, no, I want to avoid that. Either I'll go far north or I'll go south. And now people are saying, we won't even be near the sea. I said, why you go to Goa? I said, no, you don't know the forest. And it's true, they're all beautiful, the river. It is. But all the accommodation will be cramped into one space. And so I think we have to take a more planned approach. And I do wear the hat of the chair of the World Travel and Tourism Council for India, the India Initiative. And we keep talking to the government for this. I'm also co-chairing CII's tourism committee, along with the Taj CEO, Puneet Chatwal. And we keep talking to the government. And I think people get it. But I think we're getting now to a point where we're seeing more systemized, some good states. So you see Rajasthan has a good tourism model. Even the Havelis, the way they're converted, the highways are good. You see Kerala as a reasonably good travel model.
Yeah.
Madhya Pradesh with their Tiger Belt has come up as a very good model.
Yeah.
We have to ensure that this carries into the other places, particularly where the ecosystem is fragile, the hills.
Yeah.
So there we have to be very careful.
I'm just curious to understand, does the heart of the problem lie in the fact that, the incentive mechanism is broken? Because, I'm sure that famous places are incentivized to become more famous so that more people can come, and that's what will drive the dollars, right? So if you're chasing the money after all, does that mean we have to some way rethink the incentive or flow of money? Or what's the foundation that we have to change there? So consumers will get aware, and these are great ways for us to also know. I didn't know many of the things you mentioned. And in my research also, I was just so glad that you're vocal about this, which means that the first layer of consumer awareness gets taken care of. However, at the heart of systemic change is just some of these core initiatives. What are some of those?
I think there's a role to play here for central and state governments. I just wrote a piece for Mint, which talked about a larger outlay on tourism spend. I think we definitely have more than most other countries in terms of nature's bounty, heritage, culture. We've got everything. People want to come to India from overseas. Within India, they want to see India. But I think how we plan it, like I said, infra, getting there till the last point, that's really important. Now, highways have been a dramatic improvement. Over the last 10 years, it's been a great improvement. But once you get onto the last mile, it becomes, typically you'll get choked up. Even if you're going to Taj Mahal. Now, Taj, they've done a very good job. Or if you go to Amritsar, they've done a great job near the Golden Temple right now. They made it a walking street.
Yeah.
We have to think similarly. Decongest those areas. Have parkings outside and only allow either pedestrian or some few EVs for people who can't walk, etc. And you have those kind of things. You will change the game. People want to come there. They want to throng there. But the moment you allow cars and cabs and taxis and scooters and this thing, I think you mar the overall experience. So I think we've got to think through and plan for peak capacity, not today. After 5 and 10 years. Otherwise, by the time it's built out, you're already behind.
Yeah.
So it's the classic planning kind of mindset that we have to plan for the future for peak capacity. Because who doesn't want to see the Taj? I mean, you think of India, people want to come and see the Taj. Many people want to see the tiger when they want to come and see it. Do we have enough accommodation around those lovely game parks? No. Also, how do we plan the safaris in the morning? There'll be 60 cars, 60 jeeps there ready, 4 a.m. You're shivering out there, you're waiting out there, suddenly let go. There could be a better way. And I think the African safari model is far better planned, more entry exit points. So I think it's a more thinking through on the infra side.
Sure.
More than what the point you said about incentives. Eventually, private capital will respond. Where there's opportunity, they'll go. But zoning, that is where zoning comes in. This is a zone for hotels. And this is higher price because this is for 5 stars, lower price because it's for budget hotels, because otherwise everyone ends up building a 5-star because the land is so expensive.
Sure.
So zoning plays a big role in not allowing indiscriminate development. I think that's
Got it. No, that's very interesting. And I think that's probably the more important systemic change that needs to happen. But lovely to know that. And I think, again, kudos to the fact that, a company which is leading the charge for travel is the one that is also being vocal about what needs to be done well. That's consumerization in responsibility.
No, we believe it's equally our job around sustainable travel also. And we MakeMyTrip Foundation is doing a ton of work around sustainability and development. So
and that's also something we spend a lot of
on another show we'll talk about that. Yeah.
One of the themes I definitely want to understand from you further before we end on is the AI and travel. I think that's the theme, and it feels like, this is experiential travel can definitely change so much, and other aspects as well. Beyond the ideas that are always out there, right? Like natural language search to planned travel feels like an obvious one. Where I want to understand is, considering this is a very competitive space just in general, right? Because everybody sees the opportunity, and considering that the technology in itself is also, it feels like it's fairly commoditized and will continue being so. Where do you think leverage will eventually lie? And for a player like yours, how do you stay on top of your game? Because I think in one of the previous podcasts, somebody asked you this question, and I found that to be really insightful, which was, hey, in 20 years, you could say that MakeMyTrip is not the disruptor, but the incumbent now, right? Because you're now the leader, definitely. You've spent a lot of time in the market, and you could argue that there is a smaller 2% garage team, which will build out the next MakeMyTrip. Yeah. How do you stay in front of that ahead? What is the leverage in AI? And what are things that, internally the team is focusing on, to the extent that you can share? Yeah. I would love to know.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question. And I think you're absolutely right that AI today has got fairly democratized already, commoditized already. So the obvious is the trip planning. And there are a lot of people out there doing trip planning. But, if ChatGPT can do it, they're doing it for everyone. You've got that. That's a given now.
Right.
That is the same as today having any other protocols on the web which are out there for you to use. Mm-hmm. What do you do with them? So I think one of our biggest advantages will be, and hopefully we won't fritter that away, is our customer base and our customer data and our customer history that we have. Mm-hmm. Because we've had, nearly 100 million customers who have done something with us in the past, how do we today use all that they've done with us? So call it hyper-personalization, but on the fly. Right. And leveraging AI, how do we serve up something to them which is so uniquely different, but we know so much more about them? It'll take a long time for a human to do it with an analytical model, but AI could do that on the fly very fast. So if, Jivraj has worked with us and has come to us has bought something with us, has searched something with us, we have that history without stepping on, privacy issues. Can we serve up something for him now which is very relevant because we know everything that's done, which is different from what, Prema has done with us when she's come and she's done various searches from us, different from what, someone else has done. But there need to be 100 million, almost slight nuances. But the beauty again is not only this, match this up with what your suppliers want to do. So we are a marketplace in a sense. Yeah. So we've, our suppliers are setting up new places. And they're saying they're doing it on the back of, they're launching new flights. We give them data every month of searches which are going waste, as we call it, for people searching for certain airports which don't exist or certain city pairs. And that's invaluable data. Yeah. So, they're setting up capacity out there. And if we can marry that and match that, because when hotels and airlines need maximum help is when they have a new hotel first season and when they have a new flight for the first couple of months. It's normal. Yeah. So then it gets into people's minds and this thing. So at that point of time, we can already go out with a very relevant offer, bundle it all together and offer it to, to an individual who's most likely to take that, but in a conversational manner. Yeah. So it's going to happen in such a seamless, non-intrusive manner. And it's not like, hey, are you planning a trip? Hey, no, you've given us a distinct signal that you're planning a trip.
Yeah.
And you've also told us that it is around, your 25th birthday, and you'd like to go with friends and family somewhere. And you said we've been to Goa a few times. You've given us all of this thing. So it's up to us now throw up something which is perfect, and it's all stitched together and literally. So people like choices. So I don't think people like to be told prescriptive, yahi jana hai. So you give them, but the human brain can't handle more than 3.
Yeah.
So you give them 3 choices, but each one of them is a very relevant, valid choice, and where they go ahead and take it forward. Now, whoever will do this at scale, and in a language or a tonality that you find comfortable and very easy to use, I think will win the game. So we are I am the paranoid guy in the company, and I keep telling people, we don't know our real competition yet.
Yeah.
It's not anyone out there.
Yeah.
They will keep us on our toes is all fine. It is someone, like you said, 2 geeks sitting somewhere. Yeah, sure. And they're going to, so we have to be mindful, and we have to have that mentality.
Yeah.
And you started off by saying 24-year-old company. And I want to tell you, every time I meet new folks in the company, every month we have immersion for new folks, I call it, we are a 24-year-old startup.
Yeah.
We got to think like that. The moment we stop thinking like that, I think will be the beginning of the end. In our business, in an internet space, you cannot afford to even sit back for a day and say, we've arrived. No, or you'll get knocked off the next day.
I love that. I think it's so refreshing to hear from somebody as experienced as you that it's still, the beginning of the innovation. And even in this cycle, you could consider this your second vintage of looking at what's dramatically changing on the web, and to be on top of it, to be paranoid about it is just lovely to hear. Where I'm hearing is I think the data is going to be the leverage. I think trust will also now compound finally. People who trusted you and folks who will get delighted by this new experience.
And travel is a huge trust area.
Absolutely.
And I think that's very big trust area. Just after, medical services, financial services, the third one is travel.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah.
No, awesome. I think that really helps us understand the future of, Make My Trip in a shape or form. As we conclude, Deep, I would love to just quickly touch upon some personal aspects and quick frameworks. What I was really impressed to observe was also the fact that it felt like you had these business frameworks which are very well established that help you make these left brain decisions, like you call it. One of those were, drilling down on the couple of whys. You've spoken about, the customer obsession bit. If you had to really summarize, learnings from a business building standpoint, from a framework lens, that these are, things that you must do as hygiene that will take care of the 80%. 20% will, of course, be so personal. It's the wow factor that folks have to encourage. But for future builders, how would you perhaps frame these business learnings or frameworks, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's hard to put it all in a capsule. But my formula that's worked for me is firstly, to understand what problem you're trying to solve. So firstly, very clearly, young entrepreneurs come they're saying, we want to do something of our own. I'm not quite sure what it is. So I say, okay, go back. And I meet literally a young entrepreneur one a day. So I said, okay, go back and think harder of what you want to do and come back and how you will do that better than anyone else and at scale. Assume you'll get the money at the right point of time, but what is your big idea?
Yeah.
And is it something today? It's a global world. You're competing not with someone else in NCR or Bangalore. You're competing with someone else in Silicon Valley. Yeah. So how are you going to do that at scale? I think is a very, very key factor. The first thing. I think the next, once you're in it, being very close to customer and actually investing disproportionate time on customer labs and focus groups have helped a lot. So I keep pushing the teams to keep going back. I say, listen, I do it, and I do it for 2 reasons. One, I learn. If we do 8 hours a day, and we do that, let's say, the whole week or half the week, the amount you learn, because we have perceptions, we all think we know the customer. And the customer, like we just said, has changed so dramatically that no one knows the customer that well. The second reason I do it, if I take it seriously, then others take it serious. So we fill up the room again. We'll be 15, 20 of us in that room, and the next room are moderated interviews going on. I think that's really important. The third one, and I'm not saying in any particular order, I touched upon it before, but I cannot overemphasize the value of team. I think to have many entrepreneurs around you who take up their particular task as this is my company and this is my ball to take. These are people who are ready to take the ball and run with it. And they will only ask you at a crossroad if they need to. These are people who will take the risk, but do it in a manner saying, boss, we're going to do this. This is the upside. We can make a few crores for the company. This is the downside. We can lose a few lakhs. This is how I'm going to do it. Explain to you this thing. you get the blessing. We don't have any huge approval process. We say, okay, let's go do it. And we built the AB frameworks and all of that. So obviously it's easier for us to do stuff today. But there are many other risks we take. Every time we do a new ad campaign, it's a risk. But someone's got to take it, right?
Yeah.
Now, what I love to see is people say, conviction, I can bet I'll put my neck on this. This is going to work. Yeah. The moment I hear that, for me, that is hallelujah. That means this person has the guts because he or she has thought about it 10x more than I have, or Rajesh has. And they're saying, listen, I'm going to put, that's dream state. That is what you're looking for. So if you can build teams of people like such people, and not everyone will be like that, it's fantastic because someone is saying, I'm putting my neck on it. That's all it is. It's not that he's going to lose his job. That's not going to happen. They just got that conviction. And that's what you really want to see at scale. Otherwise, you'll be the bottleneck. Yeah. You or the other co-founders. And there are companies who work like that. We are not that model. We are a very, very empowering company. We believe we have many, many entrepreneurs out there and let them grow. So yeah, keep it fairly simple. Have one set of numbers which you share internally and externally. I think, and be very transparent and, make sure people are genuinely enjoying work here. Make sure they are genuinely happy. And not like, okay, this is a job, because then you'll only get 60% from them. If you want to get 110%, if that's possible, it's got to be something where they say, wow, I love working here because guess what? There are no wheels within wheels. There's nothing else going on. For that, your first ring of managers have to be incredible, who will hire managers then who are also so fearless people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely. I think that summarizes those learnings really well. For the final question, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. But I want to take the business aspect aside for once. And this is a personal favorite. But as I was, just leading up to the episode, what I was just most impressed or inspired by was by the holistic nature of perhaps the career span that you spent, right? From having great education at some of the most premier institutes in the country to having a great corporate career, to then having the gumption to perhaps risk all of it to start a company, fulfill the dream of an entrepreneur, which is to take a company public, and then successfully pursue it, and now spending time on things that you really cherish, which is sustainability, the MakeMyTrip Foundation, and spend time with, your family. This is something you've spoken about as well. What I'm gearing at is if you could just summarize some of your life learnings, values on a human level, the achievement, for the lack of a better word, that you've been able to accomplish, and what does that mean for you? And if your life was a template for somebody just following, I don't mean to glamorize a lot, but just to understand the human aspect of it, I would love to understand if you could just uncover any significant learnings from each of those phases in life.
Yeah, it's hard to, I think everyone has to have their own template. I just chose at a certain point of time to make some decisions because of just where the head was getting at. Ideally at 50, I wanted to, step down from day to day. But the real truth is, Jivraj, I couldn't even have dreamt of that or fantasized about it if I didn't have someone like Rajesh there as a co-founder who had already become from CFO, extraordinary, to CEO, which was clearly, just interim, to CEO. And he was doing everything. I was executive chairman, but he was, we were actually almost overlapping. So only because he was in place could I even say, okay, listen, I want to do this at 50. He didn't let me at 50. My board didn't let me at 50. And then COVID happened. And COVID meant all hands back on the deck. So we were just working flat out for the company to survive. We were building Arogya Setu, which was something we were just doing as a service to the nation. So it was very fulfilling, very challenging. But, it was a crazy time. You look back, we've lived through that crisis. And here, even someone as young as you, 25, lived through COVID, right? You'll remember, you'll tell your kids this story one day. So then when after COVID, we stabilized and business got back like never before, which is, at peak levels now, of course. I said, I renewed this 2 years back and I said, guys, I'm really serious. I'm available. I'm always available for anything. I'm right here. I just want to carve out more time. I almost feel time's running out for, I think, passion projects, things close to my heart, not for profits, because somewhere wag the dog was happening where my calendar was managing me and I was not finding things for things which I really should. And it started with very simple things. And I just wanted to have for not-for-profit causes, for self, for health, for family, for friends. I was actually getting quite disappointed in myself saying, I don't have time. And I wanted to create that time. And, my wife was egging me, always saying like, listen, so you always kind of been fully immersed and you've been talking about saying, I'll take some more time out. So then, it finally happened. So I'm very happy doing it, but that's again me. It may not work for other founders.
Sure.
I'm very happy. I told you, I'm fortunate to have someone who can run the company. If that wasn't the case, I couldn't even dream of it. And we, touch wood, have a good thing going. So we touch base all the time. If I'm in town, I go in a couple of times a week. But we touch base all the time on something important or whatever. And so far, so good. But not getting separation pangs yet.
Sure.
A lot of people say, knowing you'll be back. I said, I'm still very busy. So the calendar is very busy. It's just very busy doing different things.
Yeah.
So my day is like all over. If I'm in town, I meet one young entrepreneur a day.
Yeah.
I spend some time with some of those other NGOs and all that. One is, involved in, few of us launch IMM, the Buds Endowment Fund during the pandemic. I'm chairing that now, get involved with that.
You were involved with the Ashoka.
Yes, I'm one of the early founders of Ashoka on the board. That takes time. There's a lovely NGO in Gurgaon called I Am Gurgaon. I'm involved there. MakeMyTrip's own foundation, sustainability efforts involved. In fact, that's the meeting which we're running to now. So no complaints. It's worked out very well. So, God's been kind and it's good.
That's lovely. I think that's very fulfilling
I
to
can
hear.
do fun stuff like this, chat with you out here.
Yeah. No, but thank you so much. I think this has been such a pleasure and honor to hear from you and grasp all those learnings. It's just phenomenal what you've been able to serve for so many future entrepreneurs. And I'm sure this conversation is going to help multiple more.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And I really like your questions. I think you did a lot of homework. And more than that, you really, I think, touched on the key things. So I'm sure this will do well. I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you.